Jason's Birds by Coven YT 2950 and Legolin 3791. Chapter 24. Dick. He looked at Tim in shock. It had been happening too many times lately, but this was on another level. Dick had thought it was bad before, that he had fucked up the most with Tim. But he realized now that what Jason told him was just the tip of the iceberg. Tim believed he didn't matter to Dick, that he wasn't his little brother like Jason, Damien, and Duke. How did it happen? No, forget about it. Dick knew how it happened. He let it get to that point. He hadn't been able to look out for Tim when he needed him, and he neglected the fact that it was obvious Tim was more and more distant from them. The signs were always there, and in order to be the Batman, to help Damien, he had ignored them, even if not consciously. Dick had forgotten what had always been the most important to him: his family. Not one, not two members of it, but all of them. It made him feel like nothing but trash, useless and incompetent, for not handling it like he should. But Dick wouldn't give up. It didn't matter how much it hurt, how much he wanted to crumple around himself and curl up in a corner, crying because of all his mistakes. His own emotions weren't compared to what he made his little brother go through. He had to fix it. Nothing else mattered. Oh, Tim. Dick pulled his wrist from Jason's grip, not looking back at him when he held Tim's right cheek, even if a part of him didn't like to turn his back on Jason like that, not with the possibility of who could take over. No, Dick was able to ignore those instincts for Tim before, and he would now. Tim was the priority. Right now, he was frowning at him, as if he didn't understand why he was touching his face, or even talking to him. It was wrong. So wrong. He couldn't let it go on. Dick, I think you missed the point, Tim tried to say, but Dick interrupted before he could continue. He wouldn't be able to change Tim's mind all at once like he thought he could. It was a stupid hope, but he had to show it in the only way he knew besides talking about it. Shh, no, little bird. Dick gently guided him to his chest, ignoring the confused noise and just wrapping his arms around his body, pulling him on his lap. He missed it so much. The way Tim was relying on his touch, crawling to it, even if he clearly still seemed lost and distant. It probably also meant he was touch-starved, which was his fault. But Dick was here for him. He would solve it. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Tim. For everything. Dick apologized, with tears in his eyes as he held Tim tightly. But I'm here right now. You have me. You always have me. He knew it wouldn't magically make Tim believe him. Dick could feel him wanting to disagree with him, but Jason interfered before it happened. You got us, Timbo, Jason stated, immediately causing both of them to look at him. He was smiling, a sincere smile, putting his hand on Dick's shoulder, the other one caressing Tim's hair. Dick struggled to not show how Jason's touch, the way he wasn't hurting, pushing, or holding him in place, for the first time since it all started, hit him. It was good, really good. He almost forgot what the other thing in Jason's body could do to him and Tim. Of course I do. Tim's tone was sarcastic, but he leaned into Jason's touch and reflected on his expression. Even if there was a sadness marking it, an exasperation, it was real. He didn't react like that to Dick. He didn't even hear what he said, his apologies and excuses. But with Jason... You do, little bird, Dick said pleadingly, nodding and cupping Tim's cheeks, pulling his attention back to him. Tim sighed but didn't say anything, resting his forehead on the junction of Dick's shoulder and neck, as if he was hiding himself from his words. Dick stroked his back, trying to keep himself from letting his emotions take the best of him. It hurt that Tim didn't believe him, that everything seemed to be pointless because of it. He heard Jason leave the bedroom, his escaping instincts being alerted by the possibility of being alone with Tim and taking that opportunity to try something. But they were quickly suppressed when Tim's arms around his torso held him tighter, reminding him that nothing, not even escaping, mattered more than Tim. B would probably be disappointed at him, once more, for this, But he just couldn't. That whole discussion he had with Jason, the risk he took for him, it meant nothing if, to Tim, it just meant they were fighting over something that didn't matter. Holding back his tears and putting his hand on the back of Tim's neck to comb through his hair, he spent minutes, what felt like hours, just holding his little brother and hoping that that would make it all okay. But it didn't last as long as Dick wished it did, as he needed it to. Because soon Jason entered the bedroom, with clothes, towels, and medical supplies in his hands, placing them on the bed. "Give him to me, Dickie," Jason said softly, but it was clearly an order when he reached out his arms. Dick's first thought was that he couldn't let it happen. That he couldn't let Jason take Tim away from him, to be alone with him, with Hood on the other side, ready to ruin whatever trust Tim had in Jason now. Whatever good relationship they were creating in that chaos. It would break his little brother at this point. "Jay," Dick whispered, begging with his eyes. At the same time, Tim raised his head, grabbing and holding his arms, as if to not let him do anything. "Dick, let me go." Tim's voice was perfectly even. Dick faced him. Tim's face was calm, and his eyes were a little distant. Dick wanted to clutch him closer, but Tim was still so stiff in his arms. He hadn't ever relaxed. He wasn't comfortable with Dick this entire time, but he was with Jason. He was happy for them. He truly was. At least one good thing came out of what Jason was doing. And, at that moment, he was better for Tim than Dick was. Maybe than Dick had been for months upon months, even after Jason harmed him. Dick really was the worst brother. He felt like he would burst into tears the moment he realized how broken his relationship with Tim was. Instead, Dick's lips went upwards automatically. "Of course, little bird. Just—" Dick swallowed, his smile wavering for a mere second before he recovered. "Take care, okay? I'll be here." He knew he couldn't guarantee that last part. Jason had been clear that if he stressed Tim, which he did, he would take him out. But he would fight for it. For Tim. Just not when he could be affected by it. He learned his lesson. "We'll see about that, Goldie." Jason scoffed and carefully took Tim off his lap. "Be chill. He won't have to take care. I will look out for him, like I've been doing, while you take a shower." A shower? That was so unexpected that Dick didn't even know how to react for a few seconds. But when he did, he scowled. Why did Jason want him to go take a shower first? Mainly, what could he, or Hood, possibly want to say or do to Tim while he wasn't there? Dick knew he should be thankful Jason didn't just kick him out right at the moment as he said he would. He was thankful, but he couldn't stop being worried about Tim. "Why now? I can," Dick argued, getting up and approaching Jason and Tim, but was cut off. "Dickie," Jason breathed out, giving him a look as he grabbed a towel and a few clothes. "Take your shower and get back." Jason threw them at him, immediately causing him to grab them. For a moment, a stupid part of him made him want to argue, but he stopped himself from doing it when Tim shook his head. It was really a stupid part of him. He looked between Tim and Jason. His little brother seemed to trust Jason, and Dick wasn't really afraid of what he would do to Tim, despite the broken leg and kidnapping thing. He shivered. Tim and Jason noticed that. "Dick," Tim called his name kindly, a sympathetic expression on his face. "It's okay. You can go. I mean it." Of course he did. Tim was a genius. Why hadn't he seen what Dick had? It wasn't important how he felt about it, though. He had no choice. If he left to take a shower, he risked letting Tim be vulnerable. But he could do it nicely and have a chance to stay later. At least, if he went on his own, he could do more for Tim in the big picture. Do what Jason was doing. To get to Tim. He ignored how it hurt, focusing on the spark of joy that came by seeing Tim less tense. Hood was a threat to that. Dick was a greater one if he contributed to destroying it. "All right, I need a shower anyway." Dick gave a fake, playful smile, gesturing to what Jason had thrown at him. He turned, glancing at them while heading to the bathroom. Tim was still looking at him while Jason was checking on Tim, As if he knew Dick hadn't helped him. As if Dick was bad for their little brother. The last time one of his siblings didn't go to him for help, Jason died in a warehouse, alone, feeling like he had been abandoned by his own family. By Dick. Tim wasn't dead, but he could have been. Or even worse. Dick averted his eyes from them. It was too much now. Too painful. Even for him. He entered the bathroom, hesitating a bit before slowly closing the door. He let his forehead rest on the door, closing his hands on the clothes and towel, and fighting the will to just hit something until his hands bled, until the physical pain overtook the emotional one he was feeling. But he knew it wouldn't be enough. No punishment he gave himself would. Dick moved away from the door. He struggled to do it, to turn his back on it and let Tim out of his sight. His instincts were telling him to stop, at each move he made, to undress himself as quickly as he could. As if he was making a mistake. Maybe he was. Or not. He thought the same in that apartment, and look where he ended up. But he was sure that he had to go back to Tim as soon as he could. Putting what Jason had given him on the stool, he didn't pay attention to any detail about the bathroom that couldn't be useful for him to use to fight Jason. There were some. Dick could have made himself some kind of weapon. But he had tried it before, and not only had he paid for it, and he knew it would be useless as much as he wanted to face Jason. He numbly stepped under the shower, turning it on and suppressing the pain on his shoulder. He started to clean himself. A few tears ran down his face as he washed his hair, but Dick wouldn't allow himself to actually cry. He had a duty with Tim. He had to protect him, to look out for him. It meant nothing. Just that he needed to focus on Tim more than ever, on saving Jason from himself. Dick couldn't fail. Not again. He only realized that the water was cold when he felt his bruise numb and the shivers going up his spine, breathing deeply and ignoring how cold it was as he turned it off. He looked down at his hands and his torso. He was trembling, and now, touching his abdomen, he actually considered the fact that none of his ribs were broken. That was good, but they should be, and instead it was like something inside was hurting with the bruise. Dick wasn't as worried about it as he should be. He walked away from under the shower, grabbing the towel to dry his body and hair. He took the clothes Jason had given him, snorting without humor when he saw the red hood symbol on the sweatshirt, although not on the sweatpants. Really? At least he wouldn't be half naked this time. It was progress. He put it, the underwear and the sweatpants on, using the products that were left on the sink, and sighing when he looked at his reflection in the mirror. He had to go back to Tim now. He couldn't afford to hurt or stress him again, not in his current vulnerable state. Dick promised himself that he would act more like Jason wanted, to not repeat the results of their discussion. Dick turned and opened the door. He was received by the sight of Jason removing the bandage on Tim's shoulder, the cast on his leg being covered by a cast cover. "Tim? Jason?" Dick said to announce his presence, even if it wasn't needed. It didn't have any other reason. It truly didn't. "Dickie." Jason grunted, not even looking at him while he finished with the bandage, unlike Tim, who immediately faced him. "Dick, you look better." Tim gave a small smile, but then he stared at his sweatshirt and frowned. Yeah, he knew. Jason could be a real asshole when he wanted. "Thanks, little bird." Dick thanked him, as he carefully approached them on the other side of the bed, making a face when he saw the stab wound closer. It was ugly, like stab wounds usually were, but not really bad. Luckily, it hadn't been too deep. Dick missed so much. "Of course he looks better, Timmy. But now it's your turn," Jason said when he got up, glancing at Dick before looking back at Tim, who retorted, "I know." There was an unreadable look in Jason's eyes, but he ignored it in order to focus on what would happen next. Jason didn't kick him out yet, but Tim would take a shower now, and he would need help. Dick could help with that, and they could really talk, too, while he took care of Tim. Something that wouldn't bother his little brother, that might make him comfortable. "I can help you with Tim, in the shower," Dick offered. taking a step closer and holding Tim's hand softly. He added, "If you want, of course." He knew Tim would refuse, mainly with the way he couldn't even hold him without him getting tense. But Dick didn't expect Jason to chuckle mockingly, patting his forearm. "Oh, Dickie, that ship has sailed. I helped Tim shower while he can't do it by himself, so back off." "What?" But Tim wouldn't. He didn't like to be vulnerable with almost anyone. Why would he? Dick's chin dropped. Tim trusted Jason even with that? To that point? "Is that true? You want him to be there with you?" Dick asked Tim, trying to sound the least accusing he could by allowing his concern to show in his voice. Tim blushed a bit, looking between his face and Jason's smirk. He held his hand tighter, though. That made his words less bad, but not so much. "Yeah, he helps me, and that's enough for me," Tim answered tiredly, and although he didn't seem to be super into the idea, Dick could see he wasn't lying. He fought the bit of jealousy flourishing. He wasn't jealous. He was worried, mainly. Did Tim have Stockholm Syndrome? He and Jason were brothers, not strangers, but it would still work with him, since they weren't very close before. But their interactions looked sincere, real, like when Dick took care of them in the past. Their bond could be very real, but Hood was influencing Jason without him even realizing. To do all the bad things he did. It would make sense. Yeah, it would. It had to. "See, I told you." Jason had a smug expression on his face, giving a weak slap to Dick's cheek. "Close your mouth and relax, big brother. You can take your place back soon. Or not." Jason shrugged and headed to Tim, who sighed exasperatedly. "Leave Dick alone, Jason." Once again, Jason reminded him that he could have been really serious about taking his older brother's place until he thought he deserved it. Although, this time, Dick couldn't find it in himself to discuss against it. And as much as it warmed his heart, he didn't have to defend him. Dick scowled, breathing deeply through clenched teeth. He should be doing it for him. "Oh, I will. We have an important brother bonding moment that doesn't involve Goldie here." Jason snorted, pushing Dick's hand away from Tim's and rearranging him into a bridal carry. Tim rolled his eyes, but allowed him, although giving Dick a caring look when they passed by him. It gave Dick strength to grin. "I'll be here, little bird. Call me if you need me." He tried to be as comforting as he could, for Tim to know that he would be there if something happened. Not even Hood would be able to stop him from coming for his little brother. No amount of fear he caused Dick could stop him. "I will," Tim started, but was interrupted by Jason, who sneered. "You won't need it." His tone was indignant, as if Dick had offended him. That made him feel better about being away from his little brother, after not even spending 5 minutes with him again. Jason truly felt like he gave a shit about Tim, which was more than Dick thought he did at first. That confirmed the theory that he was doing all of this for love, but it was Hood's fault that he was being so aggressive and mean. Dick let Jason take Tim inside the bathroom, looking away and pinching his nose, to not do something as he heard the shower being turned on. He wasn't good at going against his instincts. Dick didn't consider himself a rational person, like Bruce, Babs, and Tim, but he could be like that when he needed to. This was the moment for it. He just had to keep his anxiety under control. This wasn't the place for an anxiety attack, or for his brothers to know he was more vulnerable than it seemed. They couldn't know that Dick was weak. The sudden noise of the door being opened drove him back to reality, causing him to frown when Jason passed through and closed it. "What are you doing here? You left Tim alone? You said you would help him, Jay," Dick questioned, irritated, walking towards him. How could Jason leave Tim like that after bragging about taking better care of him? Was it all a kind of act? No, this wasn't Hood. He checked. Why would Jason pretend? "Damn it, Dickie. Calm the fuck down. The bathtub is filling up, and the water is getting warm, since someone didn't let it warm up," Jason retorted. "Oh." Dick's body language immediately changed, his muscles getting less tense and frown leaving his face. It made sense. Tim had to wait a bit more to get a shower, because he hadn't paid attention to the water. Yeah, his plan of being a better big brother was going really well until now. Sorry, I didn't realize it was cold, Dick apologized, nodding his head towards the door. But you should stay with Tim anyway. He might fall. His words only seemed to get Jason even more annoyed. He took a step forward, holding Dick's chin firmly. Your skin is what is still fucking cold, dickhead. Next time you think you're allowed to freeze in a shitty shower, call me and I can kick your ass right there for it. Jason snarled, pushing Dick's chin to the side a bit, as if to make his point. Dick would have reacted to it, but he was too busy thinking about what Jason had just said. His little wing was worried about him? Was that possible? Am I really that bad for you, Jay? If you were, you wouldn't be here, Dickie. Dick remembered what he told him in the kitchen. He was almost breathless for a second, not believing that Jason was serious. He wasn't that bad, even if his little brothers had to be the ones to watch over him instead of otherwise. The guilt he felt was almost enough to take over the happiness. Fine, I won't do it again, but Tim... Dick began to argue, shaking his head and trying to bring the focus of the conversation to Tim again. It worked. You won't fall again. I made sure of that. Jason rolled his eyes and put his hands in his pockets. Wait, what? Again? Did he fall last time? You didn't help him? Dick asked, confused, but also angrily, observing Jason pass by him and then face him. Fuck, Goldie, stop that. He fell because he was a stubborn little shit like you. But coming in with that attitude won't make Timbo see that you love him like you're desperately trying to. Jason spat, raising his eyebrows. Dick averted his eyes for a moment. Was he that obvious for everyone but Tim? Did he hurt him so bad that Jason believed him, but Tim didn't? What do you suggest, Jason? I know I fucked up. You made it clear. But he just won't listen to me. It doesn't help that you talked about how much I suck at the first chance. Dick said hurtfully, then backed down when he remembered his promise to himself. He couldn't start a fight again like before, despite how it honestly hurt the way Jason talked about him, and he actually deserved it. Oh, come on. Don't put the blame on me, Dickie. Jason scoffed, tilting his head. Timmy wouldn't believe you, even if you came as his knight in shining armor. You all fucking traumatized him. But you know what I did to show him that I loved him in just a few days? I did it slowly, with little acts of trust and care. And guess what? He was craving them. Dick felt a knot form in his throat as Jason spoke. He didn't agree that Jason took it slow, but of course Tim was traumatized. He had always been a lone wolf, but Dick could see through it sometimes, when he allowed himself to show that he was just a little boy that liked his hugs more than he thought he showed. That was why Dick reached out for him frequently before the Robin mess that he caused, to show him that it was okay to want physical comfort and not work all the time. It stopped at the moment Bruce died, and it was all too much. Too many responsibilities, both with the people and his family, but that pushed him away from the older brother Tim loved and made him Batman. And Dick knew something Bruce never realized. Tim hadn't stayed for Batman. He stayed for Bruce, for them, and in the end, it was because of them that he was in this situation. What a great family they were. I can do that. Dick looked up thoughtfully, considering if Jason was telling him that to provoke him or actually wanting to help him make Tim believe him. Jason chuckled, approaching him. Oh, I've no doubt you do. You just have to get that. Unfortunately, I can't trust you not to mess up, Jason explained, crossing his arms. That's why I have an offer to you. I can help you, and in exchange, you will obey me when it comes to Tim. Dick had to keep himself from laughing. Did Jason really think he would agree to that? No, of course not. I won't risk it with the danger Tim is under because of you. Dick refused, staying firm. How could he back down when it came to protecting Tim? I won't fucking talk about that to you, Goldie. You have to understand that I'm keeping Timmers safe. I'm taking care of him. You? He thinks you don't love him. That you don't give a shit. Do you truly think that you can fix that if I keep you in the other room, away from him for the days ahead? Jason questioned, continuing sarcastically. I didn't know you got telepathy, big brother. Very funny. Dick scowled, hating the fact that Fuck, he was cornered. Jason had clearly threatened him. He could keep Dick away from Tim, and he would. That left Dick with no choices. Between obeying Jason to get to Tim and not being there for him, he had already made his choice. No need to be sarcastic, little wing. I get it. Dick sighed, nodding. I'll do it. But as long as it's not when it comes to protecting Tim, I can't give up on that, Jay. I just can't. He gave his best, begging eyes, trying to make Jason understand why it was so important to him, hoping that he would care about that. No worries, Dickie. I won't stop you from finally doing what you should have done, Jason said, shrugging. If Dick really thought it was a good idea, he would have hugged Jason out of thankfulness. He would have to probably do things he wouldn't like, but at least he would be there for Tim. But it was too good to be just that. However, Tim has some sleeping issues, and as much as I want to let you help him sleep, we're not there yet. Jason smiled sharply as he took a pill bottle from his pocket, putting it on Dick's hand. He looked down at it, realizing what it was. No, Jason didn't mean... Jay, you can't want me to take these. It will knock me out for hours. How will I show Tim I care like that? I won't be awake, Dick exclaimed, holding the bottle tightly. That was the goal, Dickie. You know, Tim is very tense with you awake, as you must have noticed, but he still begged me to bring you, Jason bragged, holding Dick's hand over the pill bottle. Why? Because he wants you here. Just not what comes with it. His stomach sank. Having Jason say out loud what Dick knew hurt more than he thought it would. At least Tim wanted him there, though. And making me a human teddy bear will make it better? Really, Jay? Dick said ironically, but he was already relying on the idea. If it was really his only way to stay, he would do it. Anything for Tim. Aw, big brother, you're literally teddy bear material. It won't be that hard to be hugged while Tim sleeps. Not for Mr. Hug is my love language. Jason snorted and moved his hand to hold his wrist, using the other one to almost gently open his hand, the pill bottle lying on it appearing. Dick looked at him. It was true, but he didn't like to be in a situation like that. It was all he had, though, and Jason seemed to want him to take the pill himself, with the intense look giving him the hint. It wouldn't be the dumbest thing Dick ever did for his family. It wouldn't be the last one. Okay, just don't make me regret it. All right, Jay? Dick asked pleadingly, opening the bottle, dropping 1, 2, before Jason stopped him with a grip. Their gazes locked. 2 pills would knock him out for 8 hours. I could have forced you to do this, Dickie. So relax. There were worse options. Jason winked at him with a scoff and released his wrist. Yeah, it was good to be reminded of that. Dick didn't have any power there, no matter how much he tried to convince himself that his words meant something to Jason. His little brother was just making concessions. Truly comforting, little wing. Dick took the pills quickly, swallowing them and making a face. It would be better if it was too fast for him to actually think about what he was doing. He was wrong. Bruce wouldn't probably be disappointed in him. He certainly would be. Little Wing? Little Wing. The pills started to hit you, didn't they, Dickie? You've been avoiding calling me that. The way Jason said that was all humorous, but it made Dick freeze anyway. Or at least, his mind, because his body was already relaxing against his will. How did it... Dick's vision began to get blurry. A sudden fog took over his brain, causing him to lose his balance and almost fall. Hey, go easy, big brother. He could see Jason's hands reach to catch him, and he stumbled backwards to escape from them, the back of his knees hitting the edge of the bed. No. Dick felt his body falling. He tried to move his limbs, to stop it, but couldn't make them move before his back touched the mattress. It was like his body weighed more, keeping him from even moving his head or opening his eyes when they started to close against his will, struggling to just leave them narrowed. You... Dick whispered and gasped, but it was too hard to say more. Shh, just let go. I know I didn't deny when you said it would just knock you out, But these ones actually won't. Jason gently moved Dick's body to the center of the bed, lying him on his side and his head on one of the pillows. They wouldn't? Dick fought to think straight, but he just couldn't. They will just leave you. Jason paused, stroking his hair in a strangely sweet way and smirking. In the between. Between? What did it mean? Dick tried to figure it out, but the caress felt too good. It made the fog in his mind grow denser, causing him to feel like he was floating. It was great to float. Dick hadn't floated in a long time. But he couldn't, because this could be Hood. He didn't check. He couldn't let go without checking. Jay? Dick breathed out. Jason, keep Tim safe. Please. He already expected the hand in his hair to pull it, Hood's creepy voice to echo in his ear. Instead, his little brother leaned close and whispered in his ear, removing a strand of hair that was falling on his face. Go to sleep, Dickie Bird. I'll keep you both safe. Dickie Bird. That was his nickname. Jason gave him it. Hood didn't call him that. Dick could rely on Jason then. Jason would protect them from Hood. He was a good brother. Chapter 25. Jason. He kept stroking Dickie's hair as the pills truly hit him, seeing the moment it was done when his eyes closed and he breathed soundly. That was better. As much as he enjoyed Dick's dramatic, stubborn ass as company, his situation was much worse than he had thought. His big brother was fucked up. Truly fucked up. Jason hadn't realized as soon as he should have. In the kitchen. His plan was going well. Really well, if he was to brag about it. Dick was going to fall apart after Jason spat the truth about their family in his face, and then, when he and Timmers had a beautiful family reunion, he would see how broken their little brother was, how he and Bruce destroyed him, and why he needed Jason's help and protection. Of course, it would take a bit longer for him to fully accept all of that, but he would. Crack by crack, push by push, until he went back to acting like the good big brother Dick was. Now, Jason wasn't really a planning kind of person, but having his plan be shattered in a matter of seconds was a bit too much of a message from the universe. He was ready for a discussion, to argue with Dick, as they always did, but this time to win. What he wasn't ready for was Tim to show just how deeply he had been hurt by his family. He knew that Dickie had hurt Tim in the past, but he didn't realize that Tim was so messed up that he didn't think he deserved Dick's love. That he wanted Jason to prioritize his relationship with Dick instead of theirs, as if his love was limited to which brother he was less bothered by at that moment. Fuck, that would take time to fix. But he couldn't blame Dickie for that one. He wasn't to blame. At least, not all the way. Jason could practically see how desperately Dick wanted to make things up to Timmy. No, this was a deeper hurt. Bruce had managed to destroy the people he called his children since the first one. Jason thought it all started with him, that Dick was Bruce's perfect little golden boy who couldn't do any wrong for long, the older brother that Jason could never measure up to. But guess what? He was wrong. The older brother he remembered wasn't the one in front of him. No, he could see in his eyes that when he left him in the kitchen, in his desperate need to protect Tim, his fake smile, that one that looked so real when he forced him to leave Tim, in his cold, clammy skin when he got back from punishing himself with a cold shower. Dick was broken. He was just as broken as all of them. The difference was that he didn't allow himself to be, which was fucking ironic. Jason scoffed. Dickie was always saying that they should talk about their feelings, express them like normal human beings. But he was a fucking hypocrite. Yeah, that was what he was. He was lying to himself, trying to believe that Bruce was a good father, that he truly gave a shit about them, and didn't just use them to suppress his own darkness. He was hiding behind the idealization just to keep himself from realizing how much Bruce had fucked him up too. How shattered he was. He couldn't let himself stop believing in Bruce, because that would mean that no one cared about him. But he didn't have to worry about it. No, Jason was there for him too now. His big brother would still require a firm hand, but Jason would prove he could be as caring as they needed him to be. He was showing Tim that he was loved. He could show Dickie too. And honestly, he was enjoying it. He got up and grabbed a blanket, wrapping it around Dick and making sure he was warm. Jason was never one to see the appeal of physical care, or the whole protective and sweet older brother role. He could tolerate Dickie in his best days, but it didn't make sense why someone would need or want that from him, and why he would give it to them. The closest it got was what he did for his people, to every kid that had the bad luck to be born and live in Crime Alley, or the prostitutes who were long ago doomed to the miserable fate of people who were raised in Park Row. The fate he hadn't been able to escape. Jason did the job, though. He took control of the gangs and the mob, and he made the place less of a hell. He protected what was his. He looked out for them. It turned out, it felt different when people he was taking care of were actually his. He ruled Crime Alley with an iron fist, but he gave the people their choices. He didn't force them. He just led them the right way. Dick and Tim, they were his brothers. His birds. He couldn't let anything go with them. And looking back, he realized that he never actually saw Timmers as his little brother. Or he didn't want to, because if he had, this would have happened a long time ago, maybe even before he beat the shit out of him and cut his throat. At that moment, there was so much green that Jason barely could remember exactly what he had done. But if he had realized that Timbo had always been his Robin, his little brother, well, Bruce would have lost his birds sooner. Jason smiled when Dickie grunted quietly, snoring peacefully. Yeah, at least now he could relate to Bruce's obsession. It didn't change the way he wanted to make him suffer, for not valuing what was given to him so easily. But Jason would break him. He would make him cry and beg for them, for everything he would take from him. His smile grew sharp as he walked away from Dick, glancing at his figure. Batman would be shattered until there was nothing but Bruce left. Nothing but the man he had thought of as his dad. He felt the green blink into his vision, for a moment. Enough for him to remind himself that he had company inside his mind. It was weird to think of it that way, but he could get used to it. Hood apparently agreed with his little change of plans. They were cool. He opened the bathroom door, expecting to see Timbits obediently sitting on the stool and waiting for him. Of course that wasn't the case. Fucking little shit. The bathtub was already half filled, although part of the ground around it was wet as if someone had clumsily tried to fill it. The person responsible for that was balancing on the leg that wasn't broken by the shower, trying to dry himself with the towel that was in his hand, while the other supported his weight on the wall. And, at the moment his presence was noticed, Timmers turned to face him quickly, and his hands slipped from the wall, causing him to lose his balance. Jason immediately headed to catch him, stopping him from falling on his face for the second time, with an arm around his torso. Timmy, Timmers, Timbo, if I have to catch you one more time because you were a reckless little shit, you're going to have supervised showers from now on. Jason teased as he helped Tim stand by himself, still keeping his hands on his arms. Damn, his little brother would give him actual white hair. Tim frowned. You can let me go already, you know. I took a shower by myself and filled the bathtub. I'm not fragile. Of course he wasn't. Jason kept himself from rolling his eyes. Being a genius didn't make people less stupid. Bruce knew that well. And several bruises still showing, and that stab wound make that hard to believe. Oh, and where did I find you again? I think you were freezing after being captured by the dumbest villains, and staying with the lamest. Jason scoffed, and pulled Tim towards the stool, supporting his weight. Timmy allowed it, even if he averted his guilty eyes for a moment. Jason chose to ignore that last bit, and not hide his satisfaction as he smirked. I already said I wasn't at my best, Timmers mumbled, moodily, with an involuntary pout as he sat on the stool. And Jason would never stop bringing that up. 3 villains. 3 fucking villains in one night. That must have been a record, even for their family. I totally believe that. Of course I do. Jason said sarcastically, accomplishing his mission of provoking his brother and being an asshole about it. It felt good. He couldn't believe he missed that all those years. Well, being a brother at least. He was just a natural asshole with most of his siblings, for as long as he could remember. Can't you stop being an idiot for a few and wash my hair so we can go back to Dick, Jason? Tim asked exasperatedly, almost indifferently, if Jason didn't know him better. Oh, wow. Was that what he thought it was? Jason felt the smile grow on his face before he even realized it. Okay, I need a minute to process that. Jason chuckled, gesturing from him to Tim. You want me to wash your hair again? Was his little brother truly asking him something for himself? Not just to protect someone else or act like a hero, but something he had enjoyed that Jason did before? Timmy rolled his eyes, a little blush on his cheeks, as he pressed his fingers through his hair distractedly. It's been 2 days, Jason. I would like to have it clean. Just that. Don't get arrogant over it. Too late. He would so brag about it for days. Just that, my ass. Timbo might be touched, but he managed to stay away from any touch for months. All because it came from people who he thought didn't care about him. But he enjoyed it when Jason washed his hair. He let it happen when Jason did that. He could deny that it was the reason he wanted it again, but it was okay. Jason knew the truth. Whatever makes you sleep better, little brother. Jason snorted and messed Tim's hair before carefully helping him get into the tub. He observed an involuntary, relaxed smile appear on Timbit's face as the warm water swallowed more than half his body. The smile reflected on Jason's own expression. He loved to be part of the reason his little brother was feeling good. No one cared about that for months. No one tried to take care of him. Jason was the only one. Alfred finally could be proud of him. As if I sleep, Tim said with a smirk, taking a few seconds for Jason to understand that he had just made a joke about being sleep-deprived. Fucking little shit. Now he got why Alfred was so done with them. Keep joking about that, and you'll be tied to your bed again. Jason gave a shit-eating smile as he moved behind Tim, who didn't shrink or tense like the first time. Instead, he huffed. You already did that, Jason. It didn't last long. Jason chuckled. The fucking balls the kid had. He remembered that when he had attacked him that night. It pissed him off back then, made him want to tear Timur's spirit apart even more. Now, he was guilty for having hurt his little brother so bad, and almost losing him for it. Jason was proud that he didn't lose his snark, though. He enjoyed it more than he should. Yeah, but I still can do that to Dickie, little bird. Jason teased, leaning Tim's head backwards and feeling a bit of tension on his neck. Well, it wasn't ideal, but they would have to talk about their big brother eventually. Preferably before Timmy saw him drugged on the bed. You can't hurt him, Tim stated, and he didn't need to look at him for Jason to see how certain he was of that. Exactly, and I won't. He is my big brother too, you know, Timbo, Jason said, falsely indignant, as he started to slowly wet Tim's hair and massage it, feeling him already relax involuntarily. Damn, he was probably a specialist on that already. I know, Tim started, but Jason scratched the back of Tim's scalp, causing him to moan and relax involuntarily. He asked pointedly, Don't you have to get shampoo, Jason? Yeah, he did, but he was almost tempted not to. The only thing that kept him from doing it was the fact that with shampoo, he had an excuse to stroke his little brother's hair as much as he wanted. I do. 1 minute, Timmers. Jason patted his shoulder, turning to grab the hair products on the sink. He had to get better ones now for Timbit's and Dick's fancy pedigree hair. He could order his guys to do that after he became a crime lord again. Back to his roots, as always. So, we got mint and coconut shampoos. Which one? Jason questioned as he faced Tim, who was looking at him, and raised an eyebrow. Choose one, or I will choose for you. I'm giving you some freedom of choice here, Timbits. Take the chance. Choosing which shampoo will be in my hair isn't actually freedom, Tim argued, but when Jason took a step forward, he raised the palm of his hand in a sign of stop. Fine, not the coconut. I'm little sensitive to it. Wait, what? Jason stopped walking. Sensitive? How sensitive? What do you mean? Jason asked, looking between the coconut shampoo and Timmy. Like an allergy. It couldn't be. Bruce had their medical histories listed very carefully, and Jason knew about that because he had accessed them when he first came back. There was nothing about Timbo having allergies. Tim frowned, holding the edge of the bathtub with his right hand. Yes, but it's nothing. I found out when I was little. You're still little. Jason couldn't help but interrupt automatically. Okay, maybe not so automatically, but it wasn't his fault that Tim was so tiny. He had to point that out. That's not the point, Jason. I'm the average size for my age. Tim sighed, shaking his head. The thing is, coconuts are very popular ingredients in many tropical recipes. My parents, they traveled a lot of places like that. One day, I decided to cook something from the last place they had visited, because maybe they would feel more at home when they arrived. I was a pretty good cook back then, but as soon as I came in contact with the coconut, my skin started to itch, and so did my throat. All right, that was a lot to process. Jason had so many questions. How was a kid, a rich, spoiled kid, allowed to even get close to cooking? There could be an explanation for that, such as Timmy having always been sneaky, but why would he think he had to do something for his parents to feel at home? What the hell? And then your babysitter took you to the hospital? Your parents ran to check how you were, and no more coconuts at the Drake Mansion. Jason snorted, trying to feel less of the cold running through his veins at that moment, as possibilities swirled around his mind. Please let that be what happened. Tell me that it was just a mistake in Bruce's shitty system. No, actually, I had no babysitter back then. I was a big boy already, so I just finished cooking the recipe, even if my throat felt like it had deep flesh wounds, and my skin was so red that I looked like a tomato. Timmer scoffed, an empty, opaque look in his eyes as he stared at nothing. Jason hated it. The green hated it. No babysitter? A big boy already. There were so many things wrong with what Tim was telling him. So many signs of something every Robin was taught by Batman. Signs of child abuse. It took everything for him to not smash the shampoos in hand as he put them back on the sink, crossing his arms to control his anger as he leaned on the edge of the sink. Why didn't you just go to the hospital? Why did you finish it? Jason questioned, as kindly as he could, but it still sounded harsher than he wanted. Tim didn't react to it like the other times. He just looked at the ground, then gave a sad smile and shrugged. As I said, it was no big deal. There was no need to do it when it went away after a few days. Besides, my parents arrived 7 hours later, and although they were pleased about how I dealt with it, they had already eaten, so the food was thrown in the trash, and I didn't eat it. We still had coconut during some galas, though, but I always kept myself away from it. They traveled for some months as usual, so they didn't even mention it again. Jason breathed deeply, slowly turning away from Tim and holding the edge of the sink. He clenched his teeth, feeling the green creeping under his skin, to his eyes and wrap around him, hissing and snarling. Hood was mad. He was mad. That was why he couldn't look at Timmers now. He couldn't make him think that he did something wrong, or get scared of him and have a panic attack again. But god fucking damn it, he wished he could bring the Drakes back, just to kill them slowly. He didn't care if they were Tim's parents. What they did to him... fucking months away from their kid. And when they saw him again, they were glad that he had handled his allergy well by not going to the hospital. What kind of shitty parents were they? They threw the food their own kids suffered to make for them in the trash. They left him alone right after. They didn't even bother to keep the source of his allergy from entering their house. Jason really hoped that they were rotting in hell by now, even if he couldn't be part of their suffering. But he could be the cause of Bruce's. The self-proclaimed greatest detective not only missed the fact Timbo had an allergy, but he fucking neglected a neglected and abused child. If Tim's parents had already fucked him up, Bruce finished the job. He wasn't the dad that read with Jason or took him to eat his first ice cream, that let him believe in adults again, in a real family. And for that he would pay. He would pay for hurting Jason's family. For hurting their family. Jason? Tim's hesitant voice took him back to reality, to notice how strongly he was holding the sink between his hands. It was cracking. Shit. Jason glanced at his reflection in the mirror, seeing the green fully take over his eyes. Not now, Hood. Not now. He repeated it inside his mind, feeling it working as his eyes went back to normal. There was caution in Timbit's voice. He didn't want to hear it again because of him. Jason released the sink, fixing his hair and trying to look not so intimidating, or just a maniac with anger issues. I'm fine, little bird. I was thinking. He turned, watching Tim frown at the cracks in the sink. It seemed like more than that. Jason forced a smile, walking towards him and blocking the sight of the sink. He crouched in front of Tim and gently raised his chin. That's important, okay, little brother? You're important. Their gazes locked, Jason with a determined look, and Tim with one that begged him to let it go. His little brother didn't say anything, though. He could have lied easily. He could have brushed away his feelings, like he did before, but he didn't. Jason didn't know if the fact he couldn't lie about that to him was enough to suffocate the pain he felt cutting into his heart. But it was okay. That would take time. Jason could get it. But at the moment, he would have to deal with it differently. I won't pressure you, Timmy. You only need to know that part of our deal is that you will let me take care of you. An allergy, no matter how dangerous it is or not, included. Jason said darkly, raising his eyebrows. And if anything happens to you because of something you didn't tell me, I will consider that enough to break it. Tim clenched his teeth, his eyes getting cold. You don't have to remind me of anything, Jason. I know my situation. He retorted, and looked away. No, that was not what Jason wanted. Why did his little brother have to complicate things? Why couldn't he get the message? Hey, Jason called out, moving his hand to his cheek to make him look him in the eyes. I'm doing this for you, Tim. That's what you have been saying as a justification to hurt people, Tim said angrily, his eyebrows furrowing. It seemed like he would have to get straight to the point. I don't need an excuse to murder people, little bird. Jason sneered, but caressed Tim's cheek, his eyes getting soft. I'm worried, all right? The fact that you had an allergy and I had no idea about it concerns me, because I can't protect you from what I don't know can hurt you. You would feel the same way if it was me or Dick, wouldn't you? That hit the spot. All the hostility in Timmer's expression faded away. Of course his love for them would do the job. Fuck. They didn't deserve him at all. Of course I would, Tim stated, his lips tightening in a thin line before he added, and I will tell you if there's anything you should know. I promise. He didn't quite believe that, but he would give Tim a chance. Besides, it wasn't like he wouldn't do full research on his little brother's life and family. If there was anything more about that to find out, he would. Now it was time to comfort. He needed that to keep himself in control as much as Timmers seemed to love it. I believe you, Jason nodded, moving his hands away from Tim, but being stopped when he held his left wrist. Do you have one? Tim asked hesitantly. What? Jason frowned. An allergy. Do you have one? Tim questioned impatiently. Aw, the little bird was worried that he had an allergy like him. Wasn't that cute? Jason was tempted to provoke him over that, but the sincere concern in his tone got in the way. No, I don't, Timmy. And yes, I would tell you if I did, Jason said, with false tiredness, when Tim looked like he would interrupt him to ask that. Okay, that's good, Tim whispered, and let him go, turning his hair towards him again. This time, Jason got the message very clearly. He smiled and got up. He could do that. He grabbed both shampoos, throwing the coconut one in the trash. He would burn every coconut in the city if he needed to. But there would be no coconut even close to Timmy on his watch. It seems like your hair will have to smell like mint, Timmers, Jason said happily, and winking. I like mint. Whatever, Tim huffed, but Jason could see the slight grin on his face and the blush on his cheeks before he knelt again behind him. and when he started to spread the shampoo over Timmy's hair, massaging it slowly, he watched the tension fully leave his little brother's body. He looked much better like that. His eyes closed as Jason worked through the tangles in Timbo's hair, carefully, tugging softly and pausing to scratch at his scalp. A part of him wished that Dick could see something so rare for Tim, something he lost and wouldn't have back soon. But he was too possessive for that. He wanted to keep it for himself while he could. He deserved good things, too. Holding the back of Tim's head with his hand, he slowly guided it towards the surface of the water to rinse the shampoo out of his hair. He stopped when his little brother opened his eyes and looked at him, his hands immediately holding the edge of the bathtub. There was doubt shining in them, even a trace of fear. Jason didn't back off, though. He faced Timmers, allowing his expression to show him everything he needed to know. After a few seconds of silence, his little bird breathed deeply and gave a little nod, closing his eyes again. His hands dropped off the edge of the tub and floated in the water beside him. That was it. Jason continued, only allowing the water to reach Timbo's cheek, but not his mouth or nose, as he passed his fingers through his hair to make washing the shampoo out easier. Tim's breaths were stable, and it was really sad how this was probably the most relaxed Jason ever saw him. When eventually it was all good, he slowly guided Tim's head up until he was sitting, letting him go and noticing how he still hadn't opened his eyes. If he could, Jason was sure he could look at his little brother for days like that. Was it how Dick felt when he used to lean and sleep on him during the movies? Because if it was, he could forgive him for all the times he didn't wake him up like he fucking should have. Sometimes, Jason wished he could go back to those times. To when he was a happy kid with a dad who he thought loved him. A shiny Robin who made Batman smile and laugh. Gosh, he was so stupid. So naive. But it had been so easy to get used to all of that and delude himself about it. Not again. Never again. Are we done? Tim's voice drove him out of his mind, causing him to realize that he had been lost in thought while massaging Tim's head for the last few minutes. Of course, baby bird, he said, getting up and offering Tim a hand out of the tub. We've got to get you your beauty rest, after all. Tim rolled his eyes, but let Jason guide him over to the stool again and hand him a towel. While Tim dried what he could from his body and hair, Jason grabbed the pile of clothes he had for Tim. That wouldn't work out at all. He threw the clothes at his little brother as a distraction before grabbing the towel from his hand. "Hey!" Timmy exclaimed with the clothes in his lap, but Jason ignored it and dried his leg and his back. He stared at them when he was done, raising an eyebrow. Tim sighed but let him help with the boxers and the soft black sweatpants. The sweatpants were almost comically too large, which reminded him of their height and muscular difference. Geez, Jason really had to feed him more. Tim had to pull the drawstring tight to keep them on, and they were so long they covered his feet. That was okay. Jason could carry him anywhere he needed to go. He didn't mind. Really, Jason? Timbit looked adorable with Jason's too large t-shirt hanging off one shoulder, as he gestured to the sweatshirt with its red hood symbol. This time, he had one eyebrow raised and a flat, unamused look. With his hair still messed up from the towel, it made him look about as threatening as a tiny kitten. What? I think it will look good on you. He didn't bother to hide his amused smirk. Besides, it's not like I had any clothes for tiny birds lying around. I'll get you your own later. Maybe. Timmer sighed for what seemed like the 10th time, and pretended to look annoyed, but let it go for now and pulled the sweatshirt over his head. Something deep in Jason hummed at the sight of his bird in his clothes and his symbol. The green joined in. Now he got why the big bat always put them in his symbol. Fucking possessive bastard. Jason would take care of what was his. All right, bedtime for baby birds, he proclaimed as he went to scoop Tim up in his arms. I can walk. Tim's protest came too late. He was already safe in Jason's arms, and he couldn't be that annoyed anyway by the way he snuggled closer to Jason, like a real kitty. Not a chance. Jason savored the feeling of his little brother as he carried him out of the bathroom. He felt the moment that Tim's body weight went rigid. Ah, he had seen Dick. Here we go. What did you do to Dick, Jason? Tim's voice was urgent, and just on the far side of accusing, as he held on to Jason tighter, almost as a warning. That was very cute of him. Nothing, Timbo. He just already settled in for the night. Jason tried not to take offense when he set Tim next to Dick, and the first thing he did was reach for Dick's wrist to check his pulse. What the hell did he think Jason would do to Dick? That was his fucking brother too. Was he going to go through the whole bat checklist for being exposed to unknown toxin? Next he'd start peeling up Dick's eyelids and asking for a flashlight to check his pupil response. Didn't he think Jason knew what he was doing? He wasn't a barbarian. Why did you drug Dick, Jason? Tim had untensed the slightest bit after he felt Dick's pulse, but he was clearly making an effort to keep his voice even. Okay, yeah, maybe Jason had overreacted in his mind. Of course, his little brother was just as worried as he had expected him to be. I didn't do anything that our big brother didn't agree to, Jason answered, but Tim's disbelieving look showed what he thought of that. Damn, his reputation in his family wasn't very good. Well, it wasn't like it was ever good at all anyway. It's true. We both know that you want Dick near, so you can keep an eye on him. You don't trust me with him for some reason. Jason gave an exaggerated shrug, as if he didn't know why Tim would possibly think that. But you were only uncomfortable with Dick near. He agreed. This way you can cuddle him all you want, without worrying about what to say to him. I think he makes a great teddy bear. Don't you think so? No, that's not the point. You can't drug Dick for me, Jason. You can't. Timbo snarled furiously. Fuck. Tim looked like he would start crying at any moment. Jason didn't want to upset him. He leaned over and caught Tim's chin, forcing him to meet his eyes. Tim, I know you won't believe this right away, but Dick loves you. He wants you to be comfortable with him. We both agreed on this. I'm not going to hurt him. Tim met his eyes for a long moment. His own eyes narrowed, but a cute frown was between his eyebrows. How do I know? You're asking too much from me, Jason. He knew he was, but he wouldn't if he didn't know Tim could handle it. Because he will be here with you the entire time. Instead of taking him away like I should, I'm giving you the chance to watch over our big brother, Jason explained simply, shrugging. But if you prefer it, next time Dickie can go to sleep in his bedroom, tied to his bed. Jason kept his gaze steady when Tim's glare became deadly, and he moved his torso to protect Dick's face from sight. Somewhere deep inside him, the green growled. He agreed. He loved that fire in his little bird. He just needed to show him that he didn't need it from him. No more drugs. Dick stays, and you can sleep with us. On the bed. Tim tilted his head with an unreadable expression that made him look like one of those cold businessmen who came for the galas. Huh. It was no surprise. The little shit was the CEO of Wayne Industries, even as a kid. That was the face of someone used to making impossible deals with high stakes. It was not a look that belonged on the face of a kid. Jason didn't know if he should be proud or pissed that Timmy could do that, but not feed himself most of the time. Fine, but it will be his choice. I can't control it, Jason scoffed, pretending that he was making a sacrifice for Tim's sake. Like he didn't want to sleep holding both his sleeping brothers close. For all that he told Tim that he could watch over Dick, Jason knew that he was the one who would watch over both his brothers. We have a deal then, Tim agreed, and for a moment Jason felt like Tim was going to reach over and shake his hand, but instead he leaned back, sliding down on the bed until he was next to Dick. Disappointing, but not surprising. Dick reacted to Tim's presence by rolling closer to him. Little brother? He murmured sleepily, but clear enough to be understood. So warm. Tim clearly tensed for a second, and then snuggled completely into his brother's side like a puppy. In response, Dick threw an arm over him. Jason smiled. See? It all worked out. Dick was aware enough to be his normal octopus self, and he couldn't whine later about missing cuddles. But he was out of it enough that Tim could relax. He was fucking brilliant. Jason only waited long enough to turn off the lights before he slipped into the bed next to Tim. He wormed his way under Tim so he could put his arm around Dickie too. It wasn't hard. He barely even noticed Tim's weight. Besides, it meant that he could use his free hand to comb through Tim's hair again. Tim went so relaxed that he was practically boneless, as if snuggling with Dick and Jason was the momentary cure for all his problems. Dickie let his head fall into Jason's arm, holding Tim closer. "Little wing, little bird," he breathed. "Safe. Don't go, please." "I'm here, Dick. I won't leave you," Tim reassured him, his voice giving away how sleepy he was. Jason stroked his hair, a proud expression on his face. "That's right, Dickie. We're here. You're safe with us." Jason soothed him, watching the immediate effect it had, as Dick cuddled so close to Tim that he was almost pressed between them. Jason would make sure of that. No one would ever hurt them again. He could always keep his brothers safe. That was his last thought as he sleepily drifted into the bright green fog. Maybe he should have worried about that, but he didn't. The green was comforting for once. Notes. Hey guys, I know I'm dragging this part, but believe me, it will be very important for what will happen in the near future. I hope you guys have been enjoying it, and please tell me what you do think of it, and how you think it will influence the plot. There's part 7 of, Jason's Birds, aka chapters 24 and 25. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, you can go down to the description below and follow the link to the author's original work. You can read ahead if you want, or you can just wait and listen to it later. If you enjoyed my reading, you can subscribe. Or, again, go down to the description below and follow the link to my Discord, where you can leave fic suggestions and talk with other people in the community. Their most recent conversation that I know of was about ships, and I lurked for most of that. That was very interesting. Thank you for listening. "You're still little." Jason couldn't help but interrupt automatically. God, he sounds like my older brothers.